When faced with death, I say, mourn for the body, but rejoice for the soul. Nothing true ever dies. As Ram Dass once said, death is like taking off a tight shoe. These bodies are but clothes that we wear for a temporary time, but the misery and the pain and the suffering arises from our identification with all that is changing, with the body, with the mind, with the person we believe ourselves to be. In truth, there is no death. Think about it this way. Imagine you took a gold bar and you melted that gold bar down into a gold necklace, and then the gold necklace down into a gold bracelet, and then into a gold ring. You might say, well, the necklace died, the bracelet died, the ring died. But in truth, there was never a ring, a bracelet, or a necklace. There was only the same one gold manifesting in these temporary forms. And we get attached to these temporary forms. But as I said, nothing true ever dies. The gold remains. The gold lives on. And that gold is our soul. It is our spirit. And even though our temporary forms may change and fall away, we will live on. The soul's purpose is to incarnate into these bodies, into these stories, into these characters, because the soul knows it's tapped into infinite intelligence. It knows that this life that we are living right now is the exact life that we need to live in order to let go of attachments. And so we go through suffering and pain and difficult experiences on this earth so that we can become free, because our attachments are like weights on the soul. And evil people, people who do horrible things in this life, they have the strongest attachments. That is where the idea comes from of the soul lowering all the way down to hell. And in hell, the fires burn away all that they are not, all of these attachments. And so the soul can rise up back again. And I say, to experience hell on earth is a great blessing, because you do not have to die to let go of all of these attachments. In one lifetime, you can let go of attachments that have been accumulating for thousands. Because when you are faced with death, when you are faced with suffering and pain, you are forced to surrender. You can't keep the game going any longer. You can't keep up the mask, the facade. You have no energy. Surrender is the only option. And in this surrender, you find freedom. And what you find when you are faced with impending death, or a near-death experience, or the death of a loved one, you almost immediately recognize all of the nonsense, all of the silly ways that people live their life, concerning themselves with things that do not matter at all. I like to think that a great way to live our lives is if one night you are walking down a dark alley and a man comes to you and puts a gun to your head and says, in 10 seconds, I will pull the trigger. It's just not your lucky night. In those 10 seconds, there will be some thoughts running through your mind. And it will most certainly not be the garbage that we most often spend our time thinking about. But it will be the 1% of the most important things that we experience in our life. The things that are true. So when we are faced with tragedy, our focus narrows and we begin to see the only things in life that really matter. And that is why these, what we call tragedies, can be great blessings. Pain and suffering, death is grace. Because when we are without the threat of death, when we think that we have all the time in the world, we do not appreciate life. We do not appreciate the time we are given. we do not realize that we are in the good times now, because we have so many distractions that we entertain, so many things that do not matter. And in the moment of tragedy, you are forced to focus only on the few things that do. But this is how we should live our life always. We don't need to wait for such a crisis in order to live our lives rightly. In these moments of tragedy, we are forced to let go of our lesser attachments, and this frees our soul. We often question why such bad things would happen, either to a loved one or to ourselves. But we must realize that the soul is not so much concerned about a single lifetime, because this physical reality is but the surface level of things. The soul has come here with a purpose, and when it fulfills that purpose, it no longer needs to remain here, because this is not our true home. This is but a temporary pit stop on an infinite journey. What is temporary suffering in the face of eternal bliss, of eternal joy, peace, and love? Because this is the natural state of our being. And only because we have so many heavy attachments weighing us down do we not recognize this. Somehow this is not a common experience for most people. In fact, it is the opposite: pain and suffering and misery. But for those who see, they could be lying in a hospital bed, dying with some deadly disease, and people could be around them and they would say, "Oh, what a shame." And the person lying in that bed, dying, could be completely at peace and say in return, "Oh, what a shame." They just don't know, because they believe that this body, this life, this is it. And it's not that this life isn't meant to be appreciated to its fullest. It's not that we don't appreciate this body and appreciate this mind. It's that we must recognize the illusion. The illusion that we believe is that we are our body, that we are the mind. And so the body changes and dies, the mind changes, and so we believe in death. But think about it this way. When you look at reality, right here, right now, forever and always, there are only two things that exist. There is an infinite array of different experiences upon the backdrop of an unchanging awareness. And you are that unchanging awareness, and that which is unchanging never dies. But the temporary forms never really existed. There was only ever the one gold, the same one energy, temporarily manifesting in an infinite array of different forms. And because we identify with the forms, we suffer, and we believe that we die. But in surrender and acceptance of death, you can let go of your attachment to the body, your attachment to the mind. And in this you will experience great peace, great freedom. With the death of a loved one, a part of you may die. But I say only that which you are not can die. Meaning only the person you believed yourself to be can die. And so the reason that these difficult situations are grace, they are a blessing, because they allow us to become free from all of the illusions, all of the things that we have been entertaining ourselves that are not true. And we come to focus only on what is true, and to live one's life, even for a few moments in this place, is worth all the suffering, because you will know deep within you that all is right, that all is okay, and you will be at peace. And you will understand that no matter what happens, all is well. If you are experiencing extreme amounts of pain or chronic pain, see if you can sit with and accept this pain without resisting it. See if you can observe the pain. Just allow it to be for a moment. You see, the Buddha once talked about the parable of the two arrows. The first arrow we get hit with by being in a human body, by being in form. That is the pain of being alive. But the second arrow we get hit with, we inflict upon ourselves through our reactions to the first. So the unbearable suffering that comes with pain is from our reactions. It is because we judge it and say, this should not be, and I want this to be over. And that is unbearable. But if you can sit with the pain for a moment and just observe it, be with it, you'll find that in that moment, the bite is taken out of the pain. The pain will still be there, but it's like taking the venom out of a snake. It still may hurt if it bites you, but there will be no poison. You can detach so much from your identification with the body and the mind that even the pain might cease. You might remember the story of the Buddhist monk who burned himself alive during the Vietnam War in protest. They said he did not move a muscle or utter a single sound. And burning alive is like the most worst thing that could happen, to most people at least. And so how could he be free from reaction? It is because he had no identification with the body. He may have still felt the sensations of pain, but there was no identification. And through the power of meditation, one can go within, and eventually all sensations of the body disappear. Now, I'm not saying that this doesn't take a lot of practice, but I'm saying that it is possible. And that much of the suffering that we experience is because of our reactions to the pain, our reactions to the things that happen to us. And we react because we have falsely placed our identity upon the body and the mind. But when you recognize your true nature as the soul, as consciousness, as awareness, it's all true enough. You experience freedom because you are no longer attached to illusion. You are no longer attached to the body and the mind, and so therefore you no longer fear death, because you will know intuitively that you go on. As it has been said, we oftentimes take too seriously what the gods made for fun, and that is our life here. Everything is so real, everything is so important to us. No different than like a dream. In the dream, while you were there, everything seems real. You forget about your life in the other world. But when you wake up, you see, oh, it was just a dream. And if that dream was a nightmare, you have great relief. So use pain, use suffering, use death as a source of grace, and allow it to bring you to a place of surrender and letting go and acceptance. Becoming free of all the nonsense that we entertain ourselves with while we believe we have all the time in the world. Keep your focus only on the one, the two, the three things that really matter in life, whatever that means to you, and disregard all the rest of the nonsense. Use the pain, the loss, the tragedy, the suffering to bring you to truth. Take your identity away from the body and the mind, and realize your true place as a higher consciousness being, as a soul, as the unchanging awareness that you are. And in this there is freedom, there is relief, there is peace, there is contentment. Much peace and many blessings.